Before I begin editing my pictures in Photoshop, I'm going to start looking through all of them and open up my folder, just so I can get an idea of which pictures I want to use for sure when I edit my images together, and which pictures might not have worked out so well that I do not want to include. Doing this is going to save me a lot of time in the long run, so it is important to take this part seriously and go through your images. Once my folder's opened, if I wanted to look a lot closer at what pictures I have, I'm going to go up to this little button in the upper right corner that says Show Items as Icons, and that way I can look at my pictures and they're going to be a lot bigger. So I'm going to start going through and decide which pictures I like, which pictures I might want to get rid of. One image here that I might want to get rid of is where these tables don't have any of the dogs in them, so I can just hit delete to get rid of those. In order to hit delete and get rid of them, I'm going to click on my image, right click, so I'm going to click with 2 fingers, and then go up to move to trash. And that way it gets rid of it. I don't have to worry about that picture in the future. Another image that you might want to consider deleting is where you might see overlap. So for example, in this image right here, the dog in the picture is on the far right of the screen. And then if I go 2 pictures over, the dog on the right here is clearly overlapping where the other dog would be. So since I don't want too much overlap in my multiplicity, I might get rid of this image because it is not as good as the other picture. So I'm going to move that to the trash. Now that I have all of my images placed into the folder, I know what I'm doing. I'm going to start by opening up Photoshop and placing them all into one stack so I can start working with it. So in order to do that, I'm going to go up to File in Photoshop, all the way down to Scripts, and then Load Files into Stack. Now once I do that, I'm going to go to Browse so I can find where my images are saved. And since I was organized and put them all into the folder called Multiplicity, I just have to open that up, and there are my images. Now I want to open all of the pictures that I decided to use, so I'm going to select my first image, hold down Shift, and select my last image. You do want to be careful though opening too many images at a time. If you open maybe 20 or more than that even, it would take forever to load. Once you have all of your images that you're going to be using selected, you need to make sure that you have the little box checked that says attempt to automatically align source images. It's really important to remember to select that button. If I did not have this button selected, everything within my images might be out of line. It's not going to line up or look correct as I start to add and put together everything. So now I'm going to hit OK once I made sure I downloaded my images and I checked off the box. And what it's going to be doing is taking a little bit to line up all of my pictures. It's going to make sure that the couch and the table are in the exact same spot in every single picture. That way when I start to erase and start to bring back parts of the image, it's all going to be in place and look more complete. So it's going to take a little bit, just like with the contact sheets. Alright, so all of my images loaded into Photoshop. So if you look over on the far right of the screen where the layers panel is, you're able to see many pictures here. They're all tiny thumbnails. You can only see the image on the top right now. And that's because they're kind of piled up like pieces of paper. So if I had a stack of papers, you'd only be able to see the paper that's on the top until you remove that top piece of paper. So in order to hide this top image, I'm going to click that little eyeball that's to the left of the picture, and as soon as I click that, it removes the image or hides it for now. We can come back to it, and it's going to show me the picture that's underneath. So you can keep clicking and hiding images to see the rest of the pictures here. Make sure that they're all lined up okay. Something else that might be a good idea before we begin editing the pictures is to rename them. So if you look at all of these layers, they get really confusing and they're super tiny thumbnails, so it's hard to see exactly what each layer is. So if I double click on the layer, I can rename it. So this top picture here, the dog is in the middle, so I might name it dog dash middle. And then I can hide it and look at what my second picture is. My second picture, the dog is on the left, so I'm going to double click and maybe say dog dash left. So it's up to you, whatever's easiest to kind of remember what picture is where. You can go through all of your layers and give them names. So now I'm going to start adding clones to my image, start putting all of these pictures together. So the first step to do that is to use the masking tool, which is at the bottom of Photoshop. It's this little box with a circle in the middle. I'm going to click that when I have my first picture selected, and you'll notice on my layer that it adds a little white box next to my picture. That means that there is a mask on my image. After I have the layer mask added to the layer, I'm going to go over to my tool panel on the left and select my paintbrush tool. Now there's a couple of different settings that I need to make sure my paintbrush tool has before I begin. The first is to make sure that the mode is on normal. A lot of you have been using vignettes lately, so the mode might come up as soft light right away. You need to make sure that it says normal. And then I'm going to go over to opacity, and this needs to be turned all the way up to 100%. Flow needs to be at 100% as well. And the last most important thing is that I have black selected as the color in my paint palette here. So I'm going to double click just to make sure it's black. I'm going to drag my little mouse to the left corner where it's completely black here, hit OK. And then I'm going to go over to my paintbrush at the top left here. And you can choose either normal brush or maybe one that has a little bit of a feather around the outside. You can also adjust the size of your brush, so I'm going to be using it on top of the dog here, so I need to make sure it's a good size to use on the dog. And once I have that, I'm going to start adding the mask over top of the dog here. So you'll see it's starting to get rid of or delete the dog. Now this is something that we want. Because as soon as I hold down Command I on my keyboard, you'll notice that another dog pops up. And the reason why is because we have a layer mask again on top of this layer. So when I erase or when I mask off that first dog, I can invert it. So again, hitting Command I on the keyboard, and that allows the mask to add the second dog to it. Now something else that you'll want to keep in mind when you are erasing or adding the mask to your image is that you include any reflections or shadows as well. So if you'll notice, this dog to the left here has a shadow or a reflection on the floor. However, the dog that I masked off does not have a reflection. So what I need to do is go back to when I had the dog here, and you'll notice it does actually have that reflection on the floor. So I need to mask that off as well. So as I am masking off the dog, I'm going to mask off that floor where the reflection was. So again, I'm going to hold down Command I, and that second dog pops up. Now what I'm going to do is the same thing all the way through till I get to my last picture. So I'm going to select my second layer. I'm going to hide that top one just so it doesn't get in the way. I'm going to add a layer mask, so again the box with the circle in it. And I'm going to start masking off the dog. So now that I have that dog masked off, I'm going to hold down Command I again, and it is going to bring up the next dog. So then I'm going to hide that layer just to get it out of the way. Go to the next layer, add the mask, and I'm going to mask off that dog as well. Mask off the reflection. Hold down Command I, and then the next dog is going to pop up. Now as soon as you finish and go all the way through with the rest of your dogs, you can start to bring back the images that you had before. So now you'll notice that I have 4 different dogs here. One thing that you might notice as you are working is that you have 2 clones that are right next to each other or slightly overlapping, where part of the background is covering up that clone. So for example, this dog in the background is being covered up by a little bit of the background with the dog in the front. So go on to the next tutorial where you'll learn how to fix this and how to make it look more natural, like there are the 2 real dogs without that little bit of overlap.